Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. As always, I am Mike Chisholm. As always, I am excited to be here to talk about all things men's mental wellness. Before we get going on here, I've got to be that broken record. We're not there yet. I don't know how long it's going to be until I can say, hey, if you like what you see, please like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. I don't know when the He Changed It overlords are going to give me relief from saying that, but we're not there yet. So if you like this program, please show so on whatever platform it is that you are intaking this program. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please leave a positive comment. We would love that. And of course, if you haven't downloaded the He Changed It app yet, what the heck are you thinking? It's amazing to watch how many guys are being affected by this thing, and what my wife and her team are building is it's exemplary. It's amazing. It's so needed in this world, and I cannot wait for what's in store. There's lots of things coming in the He Changed It universe that we are really, really excited to announce here moving forward. Big things are happening, and I just really grateful to be part of this experience. It's a lot of fun. Now, I have talked a couple of times on this on this program about some of the things that I do outside of this. I've talked about my career a little bit as a financial advisor. I've talked about some of the other things that I've done in my background, including been part of the pro wrestling industry. That's right. We've talked about this in the past. We've had some guests on from the industry as well. And the guy that I'm going to have on today, you can see him already. We've got it so you can see both of us today, playing around with the format, seeing how things go, what people like. And I got to say, the very, very first wrestling show that I was a part of from a professional standpoint on the business end of things, it was a fundraiser that we were doing that people thought we were crazy. We were putting on an event called Kelowna Invasion. We brought in an old school WWF wrestler called Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and people thought we were nuts. We were using it as a fundraiser for BC Children's Hospital, and people thought we were bonkers doing this. What are you doing? You know, put on a golf tournament or a walk like other regular people do. Well, we're not regular people, so they weren't laughing anymore the next day when we raised well over $15,000 for the BC Children's Hospital in one night. The guy who we're having on here today was a part of that night and many other nights since. That wrestling promotion, that little fundraiser that went on to raise over $250,000 for local charities in the run from 2013 to 2019 when we did that. And Jordie was a part of most of those events. I will tell you this. The business model that we had was we would bring in a WWE guy or an ex-WWE or WWF guy or gal, and they would kind of be the draw. And then we would use wrestlers from the Pacific Northwest and the lower mainland of Canada, Vancouver area and locally here where I'm from in the Okanagan. And they would put on, it's all about steak and sizzle. The old WWE wrestler many times would be the sizzle, but the steak had to be put on by the substance of the show was put on by these amazing athletes, these amazing storytellers. And that's really what a pro wrestler is they are a storyteller. They are able to take and manipulate emotions that are in the crowd and create a story and really get the crowd around them to suspend their disbelief and put their emotion into what they're seeing in front of them. It's like a live action movie is really how it is. And someone who's really good at this business is really good at being able to manipulate these emotions and create these emotional responses of a crowd live, real time. The guy that I am interviewing today is a guy, like I said, he was part of that original show. And I would submit that is one of the best pro wrestlers that you've never seen. And I'm just saying that if you're not part of the geographic area that we are. He's an independent pro wrestlers are some of the hardest working people that you'd ever want to meet because they hold a career or a job many times while they on the side bust their butts quite literally and every other part of their body for this art that they love so much, this desire to perform. Jordie Taylor is a guy who has done that. I've seen him do it multiple times, and it blurs the line, man. When you see some of these performers, I think about actors. We just had Kim Coates from Sons of Anarchy on. He talked a lot about the idea of being an actor and being able to blur the line with reality and fantasy. Pro wrestlers do it real time. And this is one of the best. Jordie Taylor, thank you for taking time to be part of HeCast today, man.
Thank you, bro. I'm so looking forward to it. I don't really do podcasts, and this one is exactly the kind that I was wanting to join. I guess it's a perfect way to express the story and like my story and help anyone that may listen to it. And that's the main point of like my path now, is to just help people, men, and just like in general, just like use my story, whatever the case, to help who's ever willing to listen and wanting to listen or needing the growth or the help at the time.
Okay, our first show was in 2013 with you, and I would submit that the words you just said were not in the vocabulary of that guy that I met in 2013. The journey that you have taken is extraordinary. We're going to get into that today, and I'm excited about that. Let's talk a little bit about where you were, though, because I think that to really appreciate where we are and where we're going, we need to look back and say, this is where we were. That guy in 2013 that I met, I mean, you're jacked right now. That guy was jacked. You're an intelligent guy now. You're an intelligent guy back then. But tell me a little bit about that guy versus the guy now.
Well, I mean, in terms of 2013, 2011 is when I started my career. And like, I've always been a total pushover because my entire life, like, I wasn't really seen as a child or heard or like made to feel like loved or whatever the case. And it's no one's fault, right? It's like, it's all just, again, like we're running our programs, like I said before we started. But when in 2011, 2012, I just kind of was like a pushover and I would let everybody walk over top of me. So in 2013-ish, I started using steroids because I was like, I need to get big because you got to be big to be a wrestler, right? Yep. And it kind of made me like go to the other end of the spectrum. So like I went from extremely nice to kind of rude and crazy and psycho and like all my shit out. I don't know if we can swear here, but
so, it's a men's podcast. You can say whatever the hell we want to say. Absolutely. Cool.
So during that time, like 2013, I was in the middle of like my transformation of like my first getting out of my like I was getting away from not being seen to being overseen. Like I was overbearing and like I've always been kind to people that are kind back to me, and like I kind of just used it as a way to like get back at the people who were rude to me or didn't see me, because I kind of had a thing with that. But during that time, like you guys were like basically the only promotion or only people, and I gotta give a lot of credence to you and Rizzo, like were the only people that would give me a chance when no one else really would. So it was like those were the times which were keeping the light at the end of the tunnel when I was in a pretty dark place.
I'm very interested in this perspective, and I appreciate you saying that. It's not the first time you've said that to me, but in this context, it certainly is. You started wrestling in 2011. Where did you train?
Storm's Wrestling Academy, Lance Storm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Okay, so the pedigree of Lance Storm can be traced back to the Hart, the legendary Hart House, and then and Lance himself went on to an incredible career in pro wrestling, and then started up a wrestling academy, probably in many respects considered one of the during its heyday when you were there at the time, probably one of the greatest pro wrestling schools in Canada. That's all fair to say, right? We're on the same page there.
I've never seen a better trainer than Lance Storm, and I've not to cut you off. I apologize on that, but yeah, he's the best trainer I've seen. Period.
Okay,
he's so good.
Okay, so in the ring, so you had the upbringing that you did. You weren't seen. Boy, I mean, I don't think it takes a psychologist to go, okay, well, here's a compensation for that. Get into the pro wrestling world. Mm-hmm. You go to Calgary. You learn the technical elements of the craft. I alluded in the introduction to the psychological elements of the craft as well. All the mind work that needs to be done. That an effective pro wrestler does. You come back 2011, and what was it that had a difficult time for you getting your foot in the door and getting noticed?
In terms of like, I went to wrestling school in May of 2010. So when I came back a couple months later, I didn't have any money because I grew up extremely poor. So, and I had to quit my job. But I finally got a good job right before I went to wrestling school. But I was like, if I get this job, I'm using this to get to wrestling school. So like I had to quit. And then I went to school, moved to Calgary, came back after school. And then I had 6 months of not having a job, not being able to find a job, and kind of just getting down on myself. Because like I lived in Nanaimo, and like there was no wrestling in Nanaimo. There wasn't for quite some time. Funny enough, there wasn't any wrestling until 6 months after I moved off the island, which is just funny how that works. But ECCW was the company that was like the biggest company around like Vancouver area.
Yep.
And there was also ASW, but I emailed a bunch of places and nobody got back to me. And then I emailed ECCW, but I guess they ran into a bunch of people who had said they've been trained by Storm but had no experience. So they were skeptical about people just saying that they had been trained by him. So that I had to wait for them to come to Victoria. And like, it was just perfect timing that they just happened to come to Victoria in January of 2011. And it was like, that was my thing. So I just showed up because somebody, BJ Laredo was the person that broke me into the business, essentially. He brought me to the show. And then Scotty Mack, who's the owner of the company, he was like, "Oh, you look decent. You want to be in a triple threat tonight?" I'm like, yes, I do. And then like that, I mean, it was all just like that simple, even though it was difficult to get there at the beginning.
Well, it's funny. I want to talk a little bit about that because there's a lot of guys out there right now who are tunnel visioned, and we talk a lot about the different pain points of guys that we go through sometimes. And one of those pain points is not living our purpose or our dream, the thing that we've always wanted to do. And I want to stick on this a little bit because at the end of the day, you did chase a dream, whether it was to be noticed, whether it was because you loved wrestling, whether it was that need to perform, whatever it was, you were chasing a dream. The dream had a drought. And yet at the same time, you kept focused on it. You look great. You were ready for that shot as soon as that shot arrived. I think that pro wrestlers have a very unique definition that can be universal about guys who are waiting for an opportunity and being ready when that opportunity sometimes shows up, because we don't know when that opportunity is going to show up, do we?
No, not at all, man. Like it totally is right place, right time for a lot of wrestling, for the majority of it. Yeah. But that's the thing too, is like a lot of people spend their time waiting, and I've been victim of that a lot myself. But like there is a big, I guess, difference between waiting for something to happen and then going out and making it happen, whatever those steps may be. Like a lot of us do, and I've been victim of this, not victim, because everything you do yourself, and your own biggest problem, our own biggest way, sometimes in your own biggest way, whatever the case I'm trying to say. But anyways,
Yes.
they're like, yeah, there's a big difference between like waiting for something to happen, then making it happen. And like I've been in both, and I'm still in both. Like it's hard to get past the waiting, even like a day to day. Like, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? And it's always just like a balancing act, right?
Yeah, I hear you. But at the same time, though, I mean, you had a drought there and you still kept on pushing. Like you wouldn't, if you hadn't kept working for that entire 6 months, working on your body, working on, whatever it is, the skill set that you were working on at the time, when that opportunity suddenly showed up, you wouldn't have been ready for it. And I think there's something to be said as well for preparing, whatever it is, preparing for that opportunity and always working hard, even if you're working another job or whatever it is you're doing, be willing to kind of work on whatever that purpose or that dream might be.
Yeah, take the micro steps if need be, right? Like there's different levels of what you need to work on at all times. And like it can be different every day, right? Like some days working on your body, some days watching wrestling, some days getting in the ring. Like every day looks different and every goal looks different on different days.
What did it feel like when that opportunity arose and they looked at you and said, okay, well, yeah, hey, yeah, you want to be in this triple threat match tonight? What did that feel like?
That night alone was kind of funny. Like it was not actually the best debut or whatever the case. So I wasn't really good in front of people. I wasn't really good around people. I was kind of like I was very introverted growing up. So being around a bunch of people in the first place was nerve wracking. Being around a bunch of wrestlers in itself, like because they're all kind of like egotistical, big, scary looking, whatever the case, like real men, real women, like fighters and whatnot.
Yeah.
So like being around that was already nerve wracking enough, and I was prepared for just in case that I got the chance to wrestle. And I'd never tanned before, or really like I got a spray tan. And I didn't know when I got the spray tan, like the person just sits there spraying you, whatever the case. And I had boxers on because I thought like, this is high enough. So I just pulled them up. Little did I know, because I'd be wearing trunks, that there would be an inch and a half mark of like whiteness from my leg to where the boxer like hit with my gear the next day. So there was that. And I tried to sleep like a log, and I drooled onto my chest. So there was a white mark on my chest. And like I was already like nervous because a triple threat is extremely difficult. Like it's a hard wrestling match to be in the first place.
Yep.
So I had this tan problem. I'm in the triple threat, so that's nerve wracking. I've never been in front of a crowd before, so I'm terrified about that. My heart's going a million miles a minute. And the funny thing enough too, when my sister gave me a blank CD because I was going to put my entrance music on there, and it was like something I'd worked on for a few months getting ready for it. But she didn't tell me there was a song on the first track. and it was Blink-182, All the Small Things, and like that's literally the opposite of the tone that I was trying to come into the ring with. So like when that song starts playing, yeah, I'm like, this isn't my song, and they're like, just go, go. And on top of that, my wrestling name at the beginning was the Greed Father, but they called me the Greed Master. So it's like every single thing screwed up at the time. So like it's something, but at least it's like I got out there and I did it. When I did it after that, like I just sat there vibing for like a day and a half, being like, I did it, I finally did it. Yeah, it was a breakthrough.
And again, I think that sometimes the fear of the performance itself is the thing that overwhelms and maybe even stops some guys from actually whatever it is, whether it's learning a musical instrument, whether it's getting in shape, whether it's having that difficult conversation they need to have, or coming to grips with the job that they're at. Many times those fears of what might happen, like if you would have just said the chain of events that just happened to you, if you would have told the guy beforehand that that was all going to happen, those fears might have been enough to cripple you to not go that night. But at the end of the day, what did you say? Okay, all this shit happened. It didn't go the way that it was supposed to go. Wrong music, crazy tan lines, all that kind of stuff. And a difficult match with all the nerves of that and to perform. And yet for days after, you were vibing about it because you knew you were leveling up, right?
100%. And like that right there gave me the courage to, I'd never really gone over to Vancouver or traveled anywhere or done anything on my own. Cause again, like I grew up very poor, so I didn't have the opportunities to get out and do stuff. And like, I had to take care of my sisters a lot of my life. So I didn't really have the opportunity to like go out and do things on my own. So when I did that, it was like, I did this. Now I can start going over to Vancouver for the first time. And like, that was terrifying in itself because I didn't know where to go, what to do, whatever case. I thought I was going to get lost. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, but it's like that alone gave me the strength to start like, now I can go to this next level. I can go to Vancouver and I can start hitting shows up there. And like, that was essentially what started my breakthrough of wrestling, right? Like it got me to where I needed to be. Like, it's just like a step, progression. It's like one step at a time, right?
Yeah, it's lily pads across the river. It's the stepping stones that are there. And right now, we say this to any guy who's listening to this right now. Hey, what are some of the stepping stones that you may not see? What are some of those steps that you could take to lead you to that better spot, that more satisfactory existence on this planet? Those stepping stones are there. They're there for everybody. Just sometimes we fail to see the awareness, have the awareness for them, I should say. And also, you and I talked about this before, and we're going to get into vulnerability here. And then also the vulnerability to admit or to even search inside that things aren't exactly the way that I want them to be. What would it look like if they were what they wanted to be? And what are the stepping stones that'll lead you towards that? And I think those are really powerful questions that every human really should ask themselves. I find it very interesting. You're introverted. There's a lot of people in the pro wrestling business that are introverted. And yet you said it yourself, tan lines that even boxer shorts wouldn't cover. Talk about being exposed physically in front of people, but then also once you start with public speaking, which many people fear that more than death, how does an introvert express themselves in that way? What was it that compelled you to use that as your megaphone?
I mean, it was all just like general progression. Like I've been cutting promos or trying to cut promos since I was 16, and the first ones I cut were absolutely terrible.
A promo is talking to a camera or talking to somebody and just basically talking a bunch of shit or telling a story, making your case for something. Is that a fair case?
Yeah,
fair,
more or less. And like hyping a match, hyping the next show,
yep.
Dissing your opponent, talking up your opponent, all that jazz. Just like expressing your gimmick, your character, your persona. It's extremely difficult. It's one of the most difficult things that I've run into. And like for myself, I guess in that sense of like just like pushing yourself to do the thing that you want to do, like it's one of the hardest things that I found for wrestlers, the majority of wrestlers. So it was one of the main things that I focused on since I started. And like when I first started, it was terrifying. And like I didn't get good at it for about like 5 or 6 years until after I started doing it professionally. And like that is terrifying. The whole thing is terrifying, like wrestling in front of people. And like the problem that I had, or like that even sometimes I run into still, is like the voices in your head are so loud of like, I'm going to screw this up, blah, 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 right? Like I'm not going to get this right. I'm going to forget this line, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But like the voices in your head are so strong and so loud that you can't hear anything around you. And like that doesn't work in favor for like listening to the crowd, listening to what you're actually saying. And like if the cadence comes off properly, if like you're making the right pauses, if it sounds genuine and real. And a lot of people want to portray a persona, right? Because they're scared to like let their inner selves out and be seen, which again was a huge thing that I've had to deal with my whole life, right? So yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking to say the very least.
Was learning to be a pro wrestler, Jordie, was that therapy for you?
Yeah, in a sense, it's like it's the only thing that I've wanted since I was 5. It's the only thing I've ever been in love with. Like I don't like anything else, and I've never liked anything else. So it's the only thing that since I was 5 that like you can be yourself, you can connect with a crowd, you can tell a story. And again, like the crowd part was very scary, and I never thought of that when I was a kid. But it's like I can be myself, I can express myself as full as I want to. And like when I started getting in the ring, and I started to after 5 or 6 years learning how to control the story, control the crowd, like with the ups and downs and the flow. Like that is, yeah, it's therapy. It's like even when I'm in pain, like I just go out there and like there's no drug or better drug in the world, and I know because I've done them all. So I mean, it's the absolute best.
Well, and I'm as someone who can attest for this, I've watched it happen multiple times, whether it was just you with a partner telling a story, whatever it was, where you literally had people in the palm of your hand and you got them to go, oh, like, and you the ups and downs that you used with your physical body, but also with the way that you move, the way that you said things, the way that I've watched you do it, and it's art. It really, really is. It takes a special kind of artist to be able to do that. So you're in the business for a while. Again, we want to talk about the comparison. I appreciate you going into that. I think a lot of guys don't even step up to the plate. I can certainly say from a personal standpoint, yeah, financial advisor by trade, all that kind of stuff. But I know that I'm a broadcaster in my heart, and it's just going out and doing these 100 and some odd episodes of HeCast so far. I know that I'm fulfilling my purpose. I got other podcasts that I'm doing that are kind of dream fulfilling, and I just there are so many men, Jordie, like, and you doing this, you want to be a wrestler since you were 5. You dreamt of being a wrestler, not just wanted to be, but like the ultimate dream was, oh, if I could just be a wrestler, and do this. There's a lot of guys who are listening to this right now that haven't explored some of those innermost desires of what they want to do. What would you say to those guys right now?
You only live once. I mean, it depends on if you believe that you're reincarnated, whatever the case. But in this life, you only live once, right?
Yep.
Like, and every day that you don't take the step is a day that you live with regret, right? Like the only thing that I've ever known is to dive head first into the thing you love. Because if you don't, what if, right? And like, what if is a very shitty place to be in the rest of your life. Like the only thing we're here to do is live our life, fill our lives with love, right? Like fill our every task with love. Feel like because what you have inside radiates outside. So if you love what you're doing in your life, then you're going to attract nothing but love and loving experiences and like just the happiest, most wonderful life you can imagine, right? But if you're sitting there like regretting your choices, regretting your life, hating things, blah blah blah, you're going to attract those same kind of like situations, right? Like attracts like. So if you think like, oh, this sucks, life is so hard, I didn't get my chance, you're going to get more things that like are forcing you to step into your power or further disassociate into not loving your life, right? So I mean, do it is the thing I would say.
Oh, that's awesome. Another guy that we know in the wrestling business has a a lot of success. He's been on this podcast and he talked about this is Al Snow. Al Snow was on this podcast and he talked about how people play. You talk about what if. He talked about how people play the what if game the wrong way all the time. All they do is they play the what if game. What if I don't get this job? What if I don't have enough money for the rent? What if I screw this up and my life will never be, ask that girl out and she rejects me? What if, and you play it the wrong way, and that affects your life and it affects the trajectory of your life. Whereas you could play it the other way. What if I asked the girl out and she said yes? Or what if something turned out because of that even better? What if I did get that job?
Right?
Yeah. And play the what if game the other way. And I hear that, imagine if that's all you focus on, if you just focus on what if it worked out. And I mean, I'm just putting an exclamation point on what you said, but it's interesting that you and Al both had that to say. And you did that. And I mean, you talk about, okay, so from a part-time independent professional wrestler standpoint, especially you've had a lot of experiences, and I mean I can say, because I've witnessed it, I've watched you how you have a lot of fun after these shows. You were living the life, you really enjoying what this all brought to you. Safe to say that you enjoyed it sometimes to excess.
100%. Like that's it's always been about like walking the line, finding the balance. And I'm a Libra, right? So I'm all about balance. But when a Libra is out of balance, they go to extremes. They make irrational choices. And like for myself, when I started, I told you like I was introverted. I was a pushover. Everyone stepped on me because I let them, right? Like I would get in somebody's way and I would say sorry. So like it's or like somebody would get in my way and I would say sorry is what I meant. But anyways, like
Yeah.
it was the one side where I was very introverted, very scared of life, very blah blah blah, and like I did still choose to dive into life, whatever the case. But then as soon as I went to the other end of the spectrum, it's like now I'm going to go as hard as I can, and like there was a part of me too that because at that point, not even like when I 33 was about the year that I started to finally dive into my traumas and figure out what they were and like what things were unconsciously running my life. But before that, like when I met you, that was like when I was like 25, 26, I was deep into my traumas and like trying to escape myself, trying to get away from the things that I didn't want to look at, which were like a very hard upbringing. And I'm not trying to say that in terms of like, oh, my story is hard, feel sorry for me. I love everything that happened in my life and it's a badge of honor now. And like, it's part of my story. Right. But like at that time I was, as soon as wrestling was over, because that's where I identified. And that was another big thing too, is I identified so hard with being a wrestler once I became one that like, as soon as the match is over, it's like, oh, now I got to start escaping my life again until the next match. So it's like, let's do everything we can find.
Well, and I mean, not to tell tales out of school, and you go into whatever you want to go into. I just recently had a conversation with a guy who hung out a lot with John Belushi back in the day, and the way that he described John Belushi is the pedal down to the floor, it does not move, and it just stays there. When describing how John lived his life, safe to say that there were time periods where that would be something that was you could relate to.
Yeah, I would say it's from 25 till 28, actually, probably. Yeah.
He had a 3-year run without taking the pedal off.
Yeah, just very stupid. I'm surprised I'm still alive after a lot of it, but that was part of the story, right? Like we're all like, I believe very much that we have a birth date and we also have a death date, right? Like, so whatever we're going to do in this life is whatever we're going to do. We're supposed to go when we're supposed to go, just like we're supposed to come here when we come here. But like during that time, like if I didn't, I guess, revamp or like level up, I guess, then I was probably going to party myself to death. That was probably a pretty strong factor, a pretty strong probability.
Yeah. And I mean, it's easy to have a hard life when you're running in those circles constantly and you're having those adrenaline highs and lows and the people around it and stuff. It's really easy to live a hard life, and you've seen it, I've seen it with people, and I love seeing people who come out on the other side of it. And I want to talk about that too. You said it was in your early 30s is when you realized you had trauma and started diving into it. What was the catalyst for you seeing something bigger and identifying it with maybe trauma or wanting to change or grow? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what was was there one moment, or was it a series of moments that led to that decision?
It was definitely a series of moments, because like I would say at 33 was when I had sort of my spiritual awakening, where I started to realize that I was running a lot of unconscious traumas, and like that was dictating my life. But there was one specific moment at age 33. It was like 3/4 into it, whatever the case, something like that, or maybe even the beginning of 34. I don't know. Time doesn't exist to me, right? Like I'm just like I'm here right now. But anyway, it was when I was talking to my girlfriend, and I kept on. I had this thing, and I've had this thing. Like I told you, like I used to say sorry when I would get in someone's way. Like I would say sorry over everything. Like I would say sorry constantly. It was like my trauma response, where like I didn't feel good enough. So it's like as long as I overcompensated and said sorry constantly, then it's good, right? But it's like it's also true, like you're putting up with me because I was, again, never seen, never heard as a child, and I didn't really like I wasn't shown that I'm worth something or mean something, blah blah blah. And again, no one's problem, right? But like I would just say sorry over everything. And like my girlfriend was like, I was doing the dishes and I was helping, and then I didn't do something properly, and I was like sorry, and then she's like, do you want food? And I'm like sorry, and then like just it's sorry. She's like, you say sorry so much. She's like, that's a trauma response, right? And I'm like, damn, I didn't even know what a trauma response was. And then I started to like dive into what how many other ones I had, and like it's funny too, because then I'm like, oh shit, here's another huge workload I've got to put myself into to see, like, because I didn't know what they were, right? And it's like, damn, they're literally running my whole life, and it's not my problem, it's no one's problem, right? It's not my parents' problem, it's nobody's really. It's just that's our story and what we've been given. We can either choose to continue down that path or start to work through them and upgrade.
I've got two responses to everything that you just said. Number one, the idea that saying sorry is a trauma response. That's the first one. I on all of the episodes of this podcast so far, that's one that hasn't come up. That's really, really interesting. What is it about saying sorry that makes it a trauma response?
Because I'm not doing anything wrong, and I wasn't doing anything wrong at the time. Like I was helping someone, but I always felt that my being around was a hindrance because like I never felt good enough for anything, and like that even worked into wrestling, right? So like even subconsciously when you're in the ring, if you don't, because I embody being the man. Like I feel very much that I'm the best, but then like I would fake confidence, but even then like I would always just feel like I wasn't good enough. Like I didn't deserve what I had. Like I didn't deserve to be there. I didn't deserve the nice things that I was getting, even though like I've always been given everything that I've ever asked for or dreamt of. But there was a part of me that's always like, I'm not worthy of that. Like, I guess it's kind of like imposter syndrome. Like I'll do great, but it's like, do I deserve this really? But then
Yeah.
that's the thing is like, I would say sorry for everything.
That is really interesting. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome on here, and I'm actually, there's a side project that's going on with HeChangedIt that's involved with imposter syndrome, and that's the second thing I wanted to actually ask you. Once you realize what you said there, I think was really, really key, Jordie. I'm glad that you said it the way you did because it triggered this response. The idea, once you realize that it is a trauma response and suddenly you're like, oh shit, the amount of work it's going to do, oh, another thing, like something to work on. And I think that there's a lot of guys out there who, even if they haven't explored consciously and become aware of what it exactly is, some of those trauma spots, some of those things that are in the background, the lackings that we might have in our life, I think many times the idea, we don't want to open Pandora's box because the overwhelming fear of how much effort, what will change, will our security be affected, all of these, reality, to its core, the fear of any of that stuff being rocked stops us. And I just find it interesting that when she said to you, oh, that's a trauma response, and there's a part of you that in retelling a story even goes, okay, well, oh shit, this is I'm a little overwhelmed by this here. Now you're on the other side of it. Now we're going to get to that in a second here, but any guy who's got this oh shit kind of feeling right now, how worth it is it on the other side to deal with that stuff?
There's literally no better feeling in the world. Like you feel like you're coming back to yourself, right? Like you have all these programs and whatever the case, and they run your life and you don't run your life. And that's the problem is like when you have so many things running your life, you're triggered at everything. And like a lot of men, myself, I'm the only one that can, I know my experience. So that's what I'm going off of is a lot of men being me. We try to attack everything from the mind, and like that's because we have a closed heart. We've never really learned how to open our heart, and like you can't feel from the mind. So like if you have an issue in your head being like, oh, I've got to deal with all these things, it's because your heart has to open for it. And like we try to like, okay, now I have all these steps and I can listen to all these podcasts, whatever the case, because that's what I did. I just started diving into like men's health podcasts, whatever. But it's like you can listen to a lot of things, but you have to be like in the moment, and like something comes up and you'd be like, oh, what's coming up now? I have to feel this now. Like where is this coming from? What sort of like unresolved trauma is this coming from as a child? And like that's the part that really sucks and hurts, is like you can't think your way out of feeling. Like you have a lot of pain that you have to feel and come up to integrate. And like then that's where the work comes in. Like it's like being in the moment. It's like, okay, like I've learned all these things and now I'm good. Now I'm prepared for whatever comes up. And like something comes up and you're like, oh shit, here's my heart opening a little bit. And it's like that's painful stuff.
Well, and it's painful, but also there's also the fear of how painful it's going to be, when the reality of it is that it's also moving forward. It's not still water. It's like a river, and you're moving it forward, and you might get hit for some rocks along the way a little bit, but you're still progressing versus when you sit there and it's just still. And because that hurt is still there, it's just there in a different form. It's in the form of procrastination or the form of
overworking, everything, right?
Yep, absolutely. I appreciate you talking about that. And I mean, we've had some real aha moments that we're going to get to here now. Let's go back to your 33, that saying sorry, that trigger response thing. Sounds like it was a bit of a keystone to an avalanche. Continue on in the progression of that hill falling down.
I mean, at that point, then I was like, how many times? Because even that triggered me too. I was like, that's not a trauma response. I'm just being a nice person. But like, really, it was just me like not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough. And like, I was in the literal place that I wanted to be in, but my mind thought like, okay, maybe I should just do the dishes. Maybe I can like help and do everything, because that's how I like lived my life in terms of like my upbringing with my family. It's like, how can I do things for other people to make me feel like I'm worth being here, instead of being like, I'm a beautiful soul who deserves all the love in the world, and like this is my story that I've been given by God, by whatever, by the universe, right? Like
Yeah.
this is I'm here for this reason, instead of I don't belong here, I don't deserve to be here. And I would overcompensate by like doing everything to make someone's life so easy that it started hindering their lives. And like, because like they need to do things for themselves to be independent, right? But like that was just my thing. And like from then it was like, okay, so I say sorry a bunch, that's a trauma response. Like I overwork myself all the time, and I don't rest and I don't sleep, because I feel that if I stop or if I don't continue doing things, then that's a trauma response, because I'm like, I'm overworking, there's no balance within myself. And like I had to start like learning to rest, like, because that's just as much like, it's the yin and the yang, right? Like you have to rest as much as you have to work. And I had to like just be more in the moment and like stop, like learn to quiet my head and get into my heart. And then that was one of the biggest problems too, where it's like, because when you become in your heart, then you become into the moment, instead
Yeah.
of like thinking of like, okay, 10 minutes from now I need to do this, 20 minutes from now this, like how can I continue to make myself worthy, instead of that I am worthy. And ever since
Oh,
then,
yeah.
I'm 34 now, just about to turn 35, so it's been like a painful 2 years, but it's been the most learned 2 years of my entire life so far. And like it's been the most wonderful 2 years ever. Like I would go through that pain times 1,000 if it meant to be in the spot I am now. Because like that, there's no better feeling in the world than learning to love yourself and love your experiences than love your life. Because like when you heal, your trauma becomes your gift to the world, because then you can help other people with theirs, right?
Yeah, your trauma becomes your gift to the world. My God, does that ever take the edge off? If you know that you're going to have trauma, or you know you've had trauma, but understanding the fact that your trauma can be the gift to the world, you cut yourself a break a little bit. And I think there's a lot of us who can identify with what you're saying. We don't cut ourselves a break many times. If we're shouldering the responsibility of a family, and you got stresses in the family, if we're feeling stressed, guess what? We don't want to burden the family with that stuff. We don't want to burden our friends. We don't want to. And I mean, you got these guys that are living quiet lives of desperation. I don't know how many times on this podcast we've used that phrase, where there are these, and you encapsulated it so perfectly. Here you got this guy who, on the surface, like, there are people, I'm not being hyperbolous by saying there are people who would look at you, Jordie, and say, I want to fucking be that guy. He's jacked. Oh man, the girls must love him. Look what he can do, and look at what he can do, and just, he's this larger than life kind of the superhero kind of guy come to life. And imagine if those guys realize that that guy they're looking at has worthiness issues, you know.
No
Like,
doubt, yeah.
if I'll say this, I've watched you perform. If you've got worthiness issues, oh my God, it's okay for all of us to have worthiness issues, and it's actually a bit of a natural thing. Unfortunately, what's happening is you got a lot of guys who are bottling that shit up, and this is where we're going to get to vulnerability. Because I mean, we talked before the red light went on, and because they're not being vulnerable, that shit, it stacks up. We push it down and push it down and push it down, but it comes back up, and it comes out, unfortunately, in horrible ways. It can be violent, it can be health shit that pops up, heart attacks and stroking out, and then it can be some insane, horrible psychological and mental ways that can really make existence difficult. You've seen it. You've got it. You've got some rock bottom moments. Can we go into it? Can we talk about your path that has led from where you were then to where you are now?
Open book, no problem. I
Thanks,
would say
Jordie.
that no problem, brother, no problem. So when I started my career at 23, I was a total pushover, and this is all because of like just insane amounts of trauma of never being seen, never being heard, never really feeling like I was loved, or whatever the case. And like, again, I'll preface constantly by saying that's no one's fault, because everyone's running their own programs. But like that was my story, right? Like I never really felt like I was worth anything, so I would let people bully me, pick on me, just do like whatever the case. Like I would just got to get through this. I'm the funny guy who just dismantles people's anger at me by funniness. And like I I would that crossed over into the wrestling business. And like in wrestling business, you kind of have to have a thick skin. You have to be like strong, whatever. And I was just the most intense pushover that anyone could see. Like I was scared of everything. I was terrified of getting heat, and heat is like getting in trouble, I guess, by like wrestlers alike. Doesn't matter.
It's essentially gossip. You get afraid of the gossip because for a variety of reasons.
I don't want to make anyone mad like
Yeah.
that. So I would let everyone push me around. And like when I started using steroids, that's when I went to the other end. It's like, well, now I'm the psycho. Now everything that everyone's ever done to me, including my upbringing, now I'm going to bring it out on everyone that even tries to bully me or push me around in the slightest. And like that turned into like, okay, so I've always I used chronic weed to like I smoked weed like most of my life because I was trying to hide from myself and my traumas and my story and like all this stuff, right? Like I wasn't proud of where I'd been, where I'd come from, all this. So when I started using steroids, then I started trying other things. And like I started like doing every drug I could find, more or less. And like that put me on a very destructive path where around like 28, when I told you that like I started like turning my life around, because then that from 25 to 28, I was smoking weed every day. I was doing MDMA as much as I wanted. I was doing coke. I smoked crack. I did meth. I've done like every drug you can think of doing. And like I was just when I started using drugs constantly to hide from myself, then I adopted a mindset of like, okay, I'm just gonna go until I'm 28. I'm just gonna party as hard as I can until that age, and then I don't really have a vision past that. So then I just like, because I was so ingrained in my traumas that I was like, I'm just gonna party myself to death, really.
Holy shit! Like that was a conscious thought that you had?
Yes and no. Like I did admit it to myself one time. I think when I was like at my like when I was getting to my lowest, but like I just wanted to just go as hard as I could. I wanted to be that guy. Like I wanted to just go out looking like a tough guy who handled everything and went as hard as he could. And yeah, it put me into a dark place. And then like at 28, my nephew was born, and I was also injured at the same time. Like I had 2 hernias, so I was literally just like forced to sit on my couch and do nothing. And then my nephew was born too, and like that, I can honestly say that my nephew was the person that like reignited my like want to live and like to embrace a new side of me or heal myself, I guess. But until that time, like I was just like partying and being a total dipshit, and I would do blow every weekend. One of my lowest times ever in that 25 to 28, I can recall smoking crack with a homeless guy behind a supermarket, like, and like the stupid things like that, right? Like I was just the dumbest person, and like it wasn't my fault. I was just trying to hide from my life. But around 28, when I started to like, because I'd burned all my bridges in wrestling, I just out assholed myself out of the business, and like I totally understand. I was a jerk to everyone, right? Like but then I was like left alone. Like I had no one, I had nothing. And it's like I saw that little guy born and I was like, I got to be there for this kid because I can't just like let the same thing happen to me happen to him where he just doesn't have anybody that's cool to hang out with. And not to say like he doesn't have family around him, but like
No.
it was another person who like I had a lot of I don't know what the word to say is, but like I guess like made a lot of mistakes, whatever. But I could help him not make those same mistakes, and like that was another person that I could like show love to and give the love that I hadn't really received.
So
So it
it's
was like,
totally purpose. It's 100%. It gave you a purpose that you hadn't had previously, and a new definition of purpose. Safe to say?
yeah, very much so. And like
Yeah.
little by little, after I had that surgery, I was like, I'm just going to spend every single day making the tiniest steps possible to get back to where I want to be. And like, so it was like heal from the surgery. Then it's like, okay, now I'm going to start getting into the gym. And then once I started getting the amount of like weight, I guess, or like the look that I wanted back, because I had like withered away to like skinny little man just doing drugs all the time.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I once I got to the place where I wanted to physically, then I started like working on like, okay, now I'm just going to sit down and watch wrestling. And from like 2017 to 2017, 2019, I don't know, whatever the case. I spent 3 years just sitting on my couch for almost 10 hours a day watching wrestling because I was like, I'm just going to become the best at this now. Like I can either sit at home and be stagnant and hate my life and be where I was before, or I can just work as hard as I can to become what I want to be. And like that, it very much did reignite my life. And like, that's what started, like, when I started to embrace myself and love myself. And it's funny too, like I was sitting in my house around like 2019 and I was doing mushrooms all the time because it was like an organic drug and I wanted to like get back into like look into myself with a non synthetic drug that I hadn't done before.
Yep.
And I was just sitting in my house doing push-ups while I was watching wrestling, and I just looked into the mirror and I looked into my eyes and I'm like, I'm the fucking best. I'm like, I deserve everything in life. I deserve like all the things that I've ever wanted in life. And it just ignited another thing. It was just like one more spark in the ignition of like wanting to get back to myself. And once I started telling myself that and feeling that, like it wasn't shortly after that I started winning all the championships around, and I had 4 belts on me, and then I had 5. And then I got a spot in a WWE movie. And then shortly after that, I was on WWE SmackDown. It's like as soon as I started to believe that I deserved these things, and like it was with accumulated work, and that work was self-love though, right? It was like, I'm going to do all these things because I love myself and I deserve these things. And like, I deserve all the things I've ever wanted. They started actually coming to me like rapidly. It was like bang, 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 bang things. It was
Well,
beautiful.
and I wanna make sure we don't get lost in the weeds on something like this. If a wrestling promoter is willing to have you as a representative to the point where they wrestle for and win the championship belt of that promotion, a promoter isn't going to put somebody in the position to be even working with the champion of that promotion. Never mind if they become the champion and become the representative of that promotion. I mean, attitude is probably every bit as important as the work ethic in the ring for those types of things to happen. And for you to be a champion of multiple promotions, it certainly shows that you had an attitude that was collaborative and thought, and definitely you thought of yourself to carry yourself that way. For others to see that, you've got to believe it yourself. Would that be fair?
100%. And like, I did jump around there because like I get very excited talking about it now because like it's very exciting stuff, right? Like to like
Sure.
the transformation and all this stuff. But also when I was like taking those steps to like heal myself physically, mentally, and started like watching wrestling and whatever the case, I also started to, because I had to come back to wrestling, right? Because I took during that time in which I was at like my lowest, funny enough, and like, again, this is why I say that you and like Rizzo were some of like the guiding lights. You were the only guys that would book me, the only guys that like showed me love. So it was like that kind of like saved me too, right? Like that 2 year span from like 2015 to 2017, where I was just at my lowest, being a total idiot. The time in which you guys would use me and book me, and like obviously I would never be messed up while I'm wrestling. I respect wrestling too much for that. But during that time, like I really had no one and I had nothing. Like I had my one friend who's never gave up on me, who's Kevin Daniel Adonis. He's the one guy that's always been like there for me. But aside from that, I would say you guys were the only ones that helped me. But because I had burned every bridge and like made an ass out of myself to everybody, along with helping myself and loving myself and getting my place back to where I wanted to be, I had to like start mending fences and building bridges and like extending help and to every person that like wanted it or needed it. Like if I saw somebody that was like having a hard time, getting bullied, whatever the case, I would go over and help me, like anything you need anytime. So I started opening my doors to any person that ever needed any kind of like help. So I kind of gained a reputation for being like that guy that will help you and like help you like see through the problems that you need or break through where you need to in wrestling. And like, because I always had a mind for wrestling, not to like talk myself up, but I know I've got a genius mind when it comes to wrestling. I don't know many things outside of wrestling, but I'm a genius in wrestling. So I would use that to help people. And like, because of that, I kind of got a reputation of like, again, like helping people, and people saw that, like promoters saw that. And like, obviously I was working on myself in terms of like my in-ring, I was laser focused. I was finally starting to embody what I'd always believed that I could. And like people started like seeing that, noticing that, and then putting faith behind me, putting faith in me. And then before I knew it, I had everything I ever wanted. And I was like, I don't really see many people around here that can have 4 or 5 belts at a time. Like there's not a lot of promotions necessarily in BC, right? And like the Pacific Northwest is kind of like the black hole of wrestling. Like we're kind of in our own little bubble here. So to like win that many belts that quickly was kind of unheard of. And like it just made me feel like, okay, I have the power within me now. I can do these things. I can take what I want in this life because I deserve it. But again, I hadn't got to my traumas yet. But that was my first step of like, if I love myself and I show myself what I want and take what I want and know that I can take it, then I can take it, and I got it.
Well, I got a few reactions to what you just said. Number one, we're not even talking about the time where you've you've had some other eye-opening experiences since then, but again, they're all stepping stones that lead to this, right? I want to go back to when you said you had burned bridges with everybody and all that, and I appreciate you saying that about us and whatnot. We always came from the perspective, and then this is a life thing for me. I don't enjoy operating under gossip and pretense, and I also don't enjoy when somebody tries to assassinate somebody's character, especially if it's one that I don't have that experience with that person. So for you and us, you never burned a bridge with us. You never did anything. In fact, there was a time where I think we'd used you 2 or 3 shows in a row, and I think you were off one of the next shows. You showed up and you just showed up to say, hey, how's it going, and shake hands, and if you got a place for me to be a part of it. And I just from that perspective, for me, you always had the attitude of somebody who was a hustler and going for it and whatnot. And if bridges were being burned in other places, we certainly, didn't. You never burned a bridge with us. So for guys out there who are in that place right now where you think the whole world might be against you, it's not necessarily the case. And just go and start being a better version of yourself and see what doors are actually still open. So I wanted to make sure I respond that way, because that's a two-way street, Jordie. It really is. And you never we always loved you. And again, you always put on such a good show. You are the man when it comes to this stuff. I love how you started talking about the generosity and giving and whatnot. There's a Zig Ziglar quote out there where you say that says, if you help other people accomplish your goals and dreams, you'll accomplish your goals and dreams. And that's, and I think that that's a life thing. I don't think that necessarily has to translate to specific things. It might, but at the end of the day, there's no feeling that feels so good than to help others. And the selfishness from it, or the seemingly selfishness part, is you get your cup filled by helping to fill other people's cups. Right. And I know you live that, and I know that's who you are, and that's what's in your heart. And I appreciate that about you. So you've got, you've got these belts, all this stuff's happening. COVID hits, and we're getting into that. We're getting into that age of 33 here, where there's been some breakthrough moments. You were walking along the path along the way. You were seeing improvement, recognizing, overcoming some of the things that yourself built for you, the obstacles that you self-imposed on yourself. And you've had some moments now where you've smashed through those obstacles. What else? Let's keep moving forward to the closer to the present.
So January 2020.
Yep.
January 2020. I was in a four-way tables, ladders, and chair match, and it was like when I was just like I had taken everything I'd ever wanted. Like I was on top of the world, and like I had like a meteoric rise in a sense, right? Like around the indie scene, like I just went from like mid card nobody to I was on the top of the card everywhere. Yep. And like I was in a fatal four-way TLC match, and in that match, it was very stupid. Like anything can happen in wrestling, right? Like it's just the way she goes, and I don't blame anyone for it, because like you put yourself in the positions to have these things happen to you. But so there was me and this guy. We were sitting beside each other, another wrestler. We're in the middle of the match. We're 5 minutes in, and there's a ladder placed like right here along us, right, and like it's on the center of my sternum, and I had my arms up, and like to protect myself, just because it's a ladder coming down at you, you got to be smart, right? Like I should have put my arms down here. And it was two people that were over 200 pounds, 250 pounds, right? They both came down on at the same time, and it caved in my chest. And it was literally the worst pain I've ever felt. And I didn't have to, but I'm not going to not finish the match. So I wrestled 15 more minutes with it. And like, it was fucked up, man. It was brutal. Like there was a literal dent in my chest, and it's the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. And that was the absolute catalyst right there of to like what awoke me from my unconsciousness. But so I caved in my chest, and I finished the match. I was on WWE SmackDown 2 weeks after that. And the cool thing about that, not like everything's like just magical, whatever the case, everything works as it's supposed to. Absolutely. But so my entire life, since I was 5, the only thing I wanted to do was get on WWE TV and be on WWE TV and be a WWE superstar, right? Yeah. So I got some talent or some extra work with WWE, and I got to be on the actual show on SmackDown, like on my first time there. Like it's just so cool. Yes. I was a security guard, and I had a caved in chest. This is the funny part. It's not funny, but I had a physical a couple days before that, and I had a caved in chest at the time, and I had to act like I didn't hurt at all, and like there's no pain like a caved in chest. Like it's when you breathe, when you sneeze, when you lay down. Like I couldn't sleep, I couldn't breathe properly for months, but I had to pretend like I had no pain because I'm not missing this opportunity. So it comes to the time, and I have a caved in chest. I'm not telling anybody. Like I'm walking down the ramp, because we're supposed to be myself and another security guard, and Braun Strowman, this really big dude who was there at the time. The idea is he runs down the ramp and like tackles us. And for myself, like that's my moment right there. Like we're supposed to stop the guy, right? So I ran to him as fucking hard as I could. And I like kicked my feet up, and like I went straight on my back on the concrete, more or less. Like there's a little padding in between, but like so I hit my fucking head, and I got a concussion on top of it, because I went as hard as I could into it. So caved in chest, concussion, but it's still like the moment I've been dreaming of. So I could care less. Like that's the thing I've been working towards. So when that happens, And it was amazing, and I would do it 1,000 times, just like I would go through the pain that I went through of like healing trauma. And that's not to say that I don't have a lot of work left to do, because obviously I do, everyone does. But I
Yes.
would go, like, the pain doesn't matter, right? It's like, it's the outcome. Like, you've been working your entire life for this reason, and once you get it, it's like, I don't give a fuck. Pain, I'll,
Yep.
I'll do it again. But so
Yep.
that happened, and then a couple of weeks later the world closed down, right? So then wrestling was taken away from me in a sense, because like, and that's literally my whole identity
So
since
your
I was a
identity
kid.
was stripped of you, is how you viewed that. You were at the highest high that you could be. The momentum was on your side. Not even physical adversity was stopping you from being the best you could be at that time. That's how it felt. And then suddenly everything stops.
Mm-hmm. And that, like, another thing with that too is, shortly after that, I was supposed to go to Alberta to wrestle a massive legend in the name of Jason the Terrible. And the
Yeah.
guy's a psycho, like Stampede legend, crazy guy,
Yep.
super cool and awesome, but he's fucking scary. And I knew he was gonna beat my ass because he's just crazy and he's that kind of guy, right? But I'm not
Yep.
trying to say that in like a mean, non-complimentary way. He's just a real ass dude who loves
Yep.
to fight. But so I had a caved in chest, and a couple, like, shortly, like, I had a caved in chest, and also I had a herniated disc in my neck. And that was just from randomness, right? So like, I was kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
And so wrestling was taken away from me. But before wrestling was taken away, and before I had this SmackDown stuff, or wait, it might have been shortly after. Yeah, okay. So
But a
the world,
convergence of events was happening in your life to basically be the catalyst for what was going to happen.
yeah.
Yep.
So like, wrestling was taken away. I was just kind of like left to my own devices to like just be in the immense amount of pain that I had. And sorry, the caved in chest came before the herniated disc in my neck. That's when wrestling started back up again.
Yep.
But so I had a caved in chest. I It was the worst literal pain I've ever felt in my life. And for 3 months, that's how long it took me to pop it back out. And like, I didn't go see a doctor because like, they're just going to tell me not to like wrestle. And even though I'm not wrestling, right, I'm going to power through it. I'm going to tough guy it, right? So I
Yeah.
eventually popped it out myself, and like, it was horrible because sneezing was the worst pain I ever felt, because it would like pop the little bones out little by little. So like, every time I sneezed, it would be like a little pop, little pop, little pop. And yeah, like, it was absolutely terrible. But here's the funny thing in that sense, like, I popped it out to the point where there was one part that really still hurt, and it was like a tiny bone. But I knew that if I just like pushed on it as hard as I could, that I would pop it back out. So one night I was at home and there's no wrestling, so I'm just sitting there watching wrestling like normal. So I just started dancing, and I'm like, I know that if I just attack this part and just like do the motion like while dancing that like attacks it, that it would eventually fix itself. And like, it hurt to the point where I started crying, and I'm like sitting there like cry dancing, just like pushing myself. And then at one point, as I just pushed it as hard as I could, it popped back out, and I'm like, all the pain is gone. Like, it literally is, it's fixed. And it was like, I was like, if you like, the cure for the pain is in the pain in some senses. Like, so I just pushed it until it was fixed, and like, that was my chest. And then
Don't try
so
this at home, kids.
I don't
Holy
recommend
shit.
it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. All right. So your ailments, your homeopathic remedy
Yeah.
happened to work in
Mm-hmm.
this case.
I've been able to I've been able to always listen to my body, even though like my mind was always loud. Like, I've always had this kind of like knowing of where my body needs to go to
Right.
help it fix. And I guess that's from wrestling, like being in tune with your body, because like, we're almost always wrestling with some sort of injury. And
Right.
so like, you kind of learn how to work around it, and you listen to your body, whatever the case. But so with that, and I don't mean to cut you off, if you have something to
No,
say,
no, no.
I'll
You're good. You're good. You keep going.
but so I happened to fix that, but I was still left with the I have no identity now. I don't know who I am. And
Yes.
Jordie outside of wrestling has always been so trauma riddled that I didn't feel worthy outside of the ring. I only felt worthy when I was in the ring. I only felt like I was the man in the ring. So it's like, I had two different personas. One was like this guy that I never looked at. And like, when I thought about like buying new clothes, buying whatever the case, it was always like, I'm going to buy new wrestling gear. I'm going to think about this for my wrestling guy.
Yep.
And then I had to like, oh, here's real Jordie. Here's the guy that no one cared about. I didn't care about. I've never seen, because I was never shown how to see myself. So I never saw myself. And it's like, then I had to like start getting to know me. And then that's when the initiation into trauma, without being told that I had traumas, kind of started. But it was, yeah, it was probably and like, when I was doing drugs and being an idiot around 28, that was a low, but this was like the lowest of low, because then it was like, now I really have to get into the pain and I can't mask it. I'm not going to like do drugs or whatever the case. But one of the coolest things I ever had happen was that was January. And so, yeah, I got my timelines mixed up. So that was January. And then I had all this time in which I had to get to know myself again. And it was extremely beneficial in the sense that I finally learned to see myself a little bit. But so wrestling starts back up months later, and I start wrestling again here and there, however I can.
Yeah.
And I herniated the disc in my neck. And so that was like, when I caved in my chest, I had like shocks running through my arms and my legs at all times, and I was losing strength all the time, right? And this is another thing too, though. This adds to the story. This is the part that I messed up, because like it all just was. It's been like a blur for the last few years, right? Of like cool thing, painful thing.
Sure.
But so I caved in my chest, and it was the catalyst to get to that little bone I was talking about, where I popped it back in. But so wrestling started back up again. And this is before I popped it back in. I was at a show on the island, on Vancouver Island, and I was about to win a belt that night. So I had 2 matches. And the first match, I was like, I have to take it easy because I still have a caved in chest and I feel really fucked up. And 5 minutes in the match, I got pinned hard, and it made my chest even worse. So I had to finish that match. I finished the next match. And then I went to my sister's house. And as I was laying in my sister's house, I was in the most pain I'd ever been in, to the point where I thought I was in shock, right? Because I was like, I was sitting there and I was like adjusting myself, being like, if I just move this, tweak this, something will happen.
Yeah.
And then so my chest like fixed itself a tiny bit, but this is before like it was totally fixed, but it fixed itself a little bit. But since your sternum plate is connected to your spine, the ribs connect. I felt it fix on the front, but then I felt it go into my back, and then my back went numb. So like,
oh my God.
Numb. Yeah, my back's numb, my neck's numb, and like I'm losing fucking pain, and I'm losing feeling on everything. And it was just like I sat there that night, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna wake up tonight or tomorrow morning. So I'm like, if I wake up, then I really hope that I get to. But if I don't, then I guess I've lived a nice life, and I really hope my sister doesn't come to the couch and find me here laying here. It was like,
okay, stupid question. Why aren't you calling the ambulance? Why aren't you at that point there submitting to the idea that maybe you need a little bit of help outside of the hope and a prayer? I mean, obviously it worked out, but I'm just curious. Is it pride? Is it what is it that stops you from that?
I identified so hard as being a wrestler, and like I still do to an extent. Like I've come full circle to the point where I know that I am a wrestler. Like I've what I'll say to that without jumping too far ahead was I didn't want to stop wrestling. I knew like I had like a lot of matches coming up, and so like around that time, so it was January 2020 when I had my chest caved in. It was right after that in February when I was on WWE SmackDown. I spent the next few months healing myself, and then wrestling started back up again. Yeah. And so my chest was still like, my chest was fine, but my spine was fucked up because I like popped it back. I popped it into my chest. And like, here's a weird thing. So I felt my back, like the discs or whatever. I felt like it like work itself up every disc. So I'd pop one part of the disc, the next one would move, and I'd pop one part of the disc, and the next one would move. And eventually it got to the point where like right here in my skull, I felt like a creak there, like it was like tight, right? So I'd always be like this. I would pop it and I would snap it, and I knew that I had to pop it to fix it. But like so, it was like I popped that part of my chest, and then I popped it into my spine, and then so I was wrestling semi-frequently, and then there was that night that I fucked my chest up even more so. And so that led like that fucked it up too more so. And I didn't want to stop wrestling, right? Because I had that match with Jason the Terrible, and this is where the timeline I kind of messed it up. But later on in the year, I was supposed to wrestle Jason the Terrible, and that's when things stopped again. So I was set to fly to Calgary, even though I had a herniated disc in my neck. I had a fucked up back because there was another disc that was fucked up. I was like, I get the chance to wrestle this legendary guy, right? So I can't not do that. But luckily, probably beneficial for me that the flight got canceled because they closed the world down again for a second time, more or less. Like they stopped with things again. So then I was again just left to sit there, and like I was sitting with my family just in all this pain, and like I had to wrestle the week after, but it was local. Like because it wasn't like it wasn't provincial, like it wasn't allowed to fly, whatever the case. But so I was about to wrestle on Vancouver Island again, and my neck was fucked up, and like my back was fucked up, and I was just sitting there with my family. And like it goes back to my nephew again, because he was older by now, obviously. And I'm sitting with them, and I'm like, he was asking me to pick him up, and I didn't have the strength to pick him up. So I was like trying to pretend that I didn't have any pain, and I didn't want to tell my family, and that goes back to trauma too, right? Where I was like, I don't feel worthy in the sense of like telling people my story, my problems, so I'm just gonna like suck it up and be quiet and like just man through the pain.
Yep.
And so like I was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair from this point on, and I'm going to have to retire from wrestling because like I was set that I was going to tell the promoter that I was going to wrestle for like days later because I couldn't feel like my limbs. I was like, I'm probably going to have to retire. So I just like sat there and like surrendered, and like it's the first time I'd ever truly surrendered. And I just told myself, I was like, I'm surrounded by love. I have love everywhere, no matter what. Like, this is the story that I've been given. This is the path. I'm supposed to be right here doing this, experiencing this pain. And like, no matter what, if I'm not supposed to be a wrestler, then maybe I can be a manager. Maybe I can still do something. Like there's still a purpose that I can live here. And like, I have my nephew here, I have my family here. There's still love everywhere. So I just have to be grateful. And the cool thing was, it was like, not 5 days later, because I had to wrestle the next weekend, I was at work, and because like dancing, funny thing enough too, when you dance, you move stuck energy throughout your body, and then my body always kind of just told me to do that. So I was like, I learned to isolate my neck, like with isolations for dancing. So I did that, and I like pushed the bone this way, and they kind of met in the middle, and it popped my neck back in when I was at work. And it was like I literally surrendered a couple days before, telling myself that I'd be fine, and then they popped back into place, and they were good. And it's like I don't have any pain at all anymore. The pain, like the shooting fucking feeling of my arms and my limbs had stopped, and I was good. And it's like it told me, like, as soon as I like surrender and stop just trying to force everything, then I kind of got my dream back. And it was one of the most beautiful things ever. And
Jordie, you're like fucking Wolverine. How your body has the ability to pop its bones back into the place and put itself in danger. No, we'll get the healing factor in there. And I mean, I'm not trying to make light of it. It's crazy how that happened. So was that moment where you realized that there is a world outside of at that point what you had constructed? I mean, and there are so many guys who wrap their entire identity around what they do for a living, or their position in their family, a father or a husband or whatever, a duty of some sort. And when you surrender, you talk about this moment of surrender and how it's not about the wrestling. It's about all the things that you were present in that moment and grateful for. Was there a catalyst for that, or was it just the universe just saying, okay, here you go, it's for you? Or did you read something? What was the catalyst for the aha moment? Was it just the fact that you were coming to grips with the fact that you were taking stock that you actually did have a lot more than wrestling? Is that really what it was?
It was literally just sitting in my sister's living room, sitting with my nephew after I had thrown him up, and like was like playing with him. I was just sitting with all of them, and he was just asking me to play, and I'm like, there is so much love around me. I'm like, how can I not be appreciative of this and not think about the things that I don't have in terms of like wrestling? Like I've lived an awesome wrestling career even to that point, and I was like, I have literally nothing but love surrounding me. So how can I not be grateful, right? And like when I did that, like when you're grateful, you open yourself up to miracles, right? Like you become like on the vibration for miracles to happen. And like I did. That's the thing, is like when I started to just feel the love and love myself and love what was around me. And again, that was right before I started tackling traumas, and like when I started just embodying love and feeling love and letting myself feel it. So I guess it was one of the first times my heart opened. Then that's what happened. It's like, it was just that moment. It's like, there's fucking love everywhere. What am I doing?
I would submit that you needed to be in this place in order to truly tackle the traumas.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's just,
it's another one of those stepping stones we were talking about.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I love you for having this moment. You talk, you know, a lot of folks don't necessarily hear pro wrestlers or guys who, have that, that stereotypical male testosterone persona talk like this. And it's one of the reasons why, when you and I reached out a few days ago and talk, like I want to have guys like you on this podcast all the time to break through and to talk about these moments of awakening and awareness. And it doesn't matter what you look like on the outside or the actions of what you have done. When these moments happen and these moments of awareness show up, and we pay attention and we lean into them and we actually do something, even if it's a baby step at a time, to lean into those moments, how much better our lives can be. I say that myself included. I've got my own that I've got to lean into as well. And it's hearing guys talk about this stuff, there are so many guys out there who hear this and will take this and internalize it. And the gratefulness, I think you're exactly right. Gratefulness is a silver bullet for anxiety. It's a silver bullet for when you're uncertain about things. Gratefulness is one of those. It is a silver bullet. It's so important. And when you have that, and there's so many things that we can be grateful for that we just overlook, and we're not present, and we're not aware. And for you to talk about this and how it's a simple act of awareness of the love around you, and how suddenly that becomes that avalanche that we were talking about. So what did it lead to? So what traumas have you leaned into? What awakenings have you found since that moment?
I mean, it's been a mountain. Like I've never really seen myself, and like from that time, that was more so just like getting to awaken in a sense of like learning that I had all these traumas.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I started like funny enough, like I started to like tell myself that like I deserve wonderful things, I deserve a wonderful life, and I started talking to the universe, right? Like I started like having a conscious conversation at all times, being like, give me guidance, where am I supposed to go next, what's the next thing that's for me? And like just like I would affirm that like I'm destined for love, I'm destined for like everything that I've ever wanted. And so like the next thing I said was like, I want to have a loving partner, like a conscious partner, whatever the case. And lo and behold, like a few months later, a woman that I had a crush on in high school ended up just stumbling in front of me, and was like, not like literally, but like, it was like that.
She crossed your
like,
path.
Yeah. Like I got that. And it's like, the more I look back, the more I realized that I had been given everything I'd ever asked for. And like, that was another thing. And then like wrestling just started like piling up with more cool experiences, more cool opportunities. And like, before I know it, like now I'm the man around here. Like now I have everything. I do like, I do the things that I love all the time. My life is literally just filled with love. But like during like the traumas that I hadn't like tackled that I have now is like not being seen. So I had to start looking at like myself and like seeing myself and seeing that I deserve things, and like not being hurt.
I'm gonna stop you for a second. If there's a guy out there right now who's feeling like they're not seen, they're feeling like they are the man who wasn't there, what would you say to that guy right now?
The only love that you can the only love you need is the love that you give yourself. Like if your inner child was never seen, it wasn't your parents' fault. It's nobody's fault that they weren't able to give you what you needed. But as an adult, it's your job to reparent yourself. And in those moments in which you don't feel seen, then you have to see yourself and like tell yourself that it was no one's fault, and like you're not unworthy. You're worth everything that you could ever ask for. Like, and it's not a problem for you to take up space and take up the things that you want in your life. It's like you deserve everything. We all deserve everything. We have so much. Most of us are on survival mode, and we don't know how to even look at anything, because we're just like, okay, how do I get more food in the house? How do I pay rent? How do I do this thing? Like, it's not like, we just think that like when I get enough stuff, then I'll be happy, instead of being like, I just need to decide to be happy and decide that I need my own like I just need to love myself and know that I deserve love, and know that I deserve anything I've ever asked for. So like, being seen, you're the only one that can see yourself truly. And we all deserve to be seen. We all deserve to be loved, right?
And it starts with you seeing yourself. Yeah, I love that. There's a book that I adore called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about it will make you question the way that you interpret everything that goes on in your life, including what your head tells you, and it gives you tools to kind of separate yourself from those things, and how you can in those moments become still and become present. And it is a phenomenal tool that can be used in Outlook. So I want to be cognizant of time. We're at an hour and 10 minutes, and I want to make sure that we're not taking too much time for our viewers and listeners. But at the end of the day, the transformation that you've gone through from who you were to who you are now, and it's funny, I'm gonna be kind of literal here, literally talking from picture the quintessential athlete in your mind of a football player, or what a testosterone fueled individual, over to kind of a Zen kind of a Zen kind of guy and whatnot. That I'm watching that happen with you. Take us home on the journey as to where you are now. What are the things that we haven't explored yet in this journey here, Jordie? Because it's amazing the transformation that has happened in you, the blessings that have come from it. Please, yeah, take us home in that journey.
Thank you. That means a lot. And I'm sorry if I talk in jumbles because like there's a bunch of different timelines, whatever the case. And
We're good.
There's a bunch going on. But anyways, like nowadays, now I'm just like, and I'm not to say that I'm perfect. Everyone's still learning. I'm still learning. But like now I'm more present than I've ever been when something comes up. And it obviously still gets me sometimes. But like when something comes up now, it's like, okay, what is this trigger coming up? Like, what have I not reconciled within my inner child? Like, is my inner child needing to be seen in this moment? Is it needing to be heard? Well, like there's when things come up, there are teachers, right? Like when we're having emotions come up, we're having feelings or whatever the case, like it's something trying to tell us, like something that we weren't validated with as a child. And the only thing validation we're going to get is by ourselves. So like now I really just love my life. Like I know that everything that happens to me is exactly what's meant to happen to me for my highest good. And like I live a dream. Like my life is amazing. Like I went from like smoking crack and meth to being like, now my life is amazing. I don't need to hide from anything. And like I did do all those drugs and whatever the case, so I could hide from myself. And now it's like I don't want to hide from myself. Now I just want to be right here living this magical thing that I have, which is my life. And like the more I do that, the more like I literally just get everything that I want because I'm always in the vibration for miracles. And my life is a giant miracle, which is wonderful.
Oh, it's phenomenal to hear this, Jordie. I read something, I forget where it was, where it was that I read it, but actually it's something that Candy, it's something that she wants to help incorporate into the He Changed It app. Actually, she was talking about fear and how fear, if we can look at it, we can identify it. And if we can put a filter on when we recognize that we're afraid or that we're uncertain, and we say, okay, well, what if this is a gift from the universe meant to teach me something? And you kind of alluded to that. And it just reminded me of what Candy was saying and how, what if we as men, every single time something that brings up anxiety, something that brings up fear or whatever, what if we could kind of separate ourselves from the emotion and analyze it and go, okay, what's it trying to teach me? What's it trying to make me deal with from the past? You talk about the inner child, and I mean, it's funny, childhood trauma is childhood trauma. It doesn't have to be that we were physically or mentally abused or something like that. It could be the way that someone looked at us wrong on the playground on that day and how we interpreted it that day, and it created a block of some sort that can affect us now. And only by analyzing, like what you just said, like, how can this teach me? What is it trying to tell me? What is this a result of? Asking those questions. Jordie, you're a changed guy. Like, you have a very different outlook than you did, and I'm astounded by it. And you talking about some of these behaviors and some of these thought patterns that you have now certainly are filling in gaps as to how you've made such a radical mental change. Do you think that mental change, that adjustment is possible for any guy out there?
Any guy. Like we're all the same, really. We're like we all have the same traumas. We're not all specifically the same, but we all have the same challenges. We're all facing challenges. We all feel sadness the same. We all feel love the same. We all have the same strength within us. Yeah. Everybody has the ability to do it. It's just whether they're willing to love themselves enough to make that change. And like a lot of it is, we don't feel safe because we're not taught how to feel safe, right? Like, but when those things come up, all we have to do, like it is my thing, but like that's the thing that I do is like I tell myself, like, I'm safe. Like, I'm safe to feel this. I'm safe to work through this. I'm safe in my skin right now. And like, we're not what our traumas gave us. Like, we can choose who we are every day, right? Like, we can choose to run our patterns and run the things that we had coming up like throughout our lives, or we can be right here, right now, and accept everything that's happened to us, and then like just choose to live, choose to love, and choose to be grateful.
I've got two things that I wanna bring up, and then I want to take her home, if that's okay. The first thing is, well, the second thing is going to be how do people get in contact with you, because I think that's really important. But the first thing, before I do that, when you found out about what my wife and her team are building, this men's mental wellness platform, this app, prevention in your pocket, they like to call it, these tools that we want to be give for guys to equip them with these skills that you have learned through the School of Hard Knocks. When you heard about the HeChangedIt app, what is it about that's got you so excited?
It's literally what every guy needs. Like, we're all taught to be strong, be tough, be whatever the case, but like, in order to be vulnerable, which we all need to do, we need to start diving into our things. And like that's literally what you're providing is like, we all have hard times and hard lives, but like the change comes from within, and the only one that's going to love yourself and give yourself that change is you. And like you're giving that awareness, you're giving platforms for people to talk about that same kind of change that they've had, right? Like not only is it wonderful to listen to, but it's also amazing to and therapeutic to get it off your chest. Like I've never really told the story of like my upbringing, right? So like it's just as therapeutic for me to be able to like get it out finally, right? It's beautiful. I think it's the thing everybody needs to have. Yeah.
It's freedom. I mean, and it's funny. The ironic part about it is we try and, man up by staying tough and not bringing it up and all that. But really, you show that you're tough by being able to be vulnerable. That's the ironic part about the whole thing.
Very much so.
Yeah. It's a mind fuck, isn't it, man? Like the things that lead to success are the things that naturally, it's not necessarily intuitive until you've gone through it. And once you've gone through it, it's like, oh my God, how many years did I spend in your case, not giving yourself credit for even being there, not being seen. God damn. I mean, there's so many guys that are in that place right now, and we want to help. And that's what leads me to, you are a guy that wants to help. And at the end of the day, this app and this movement is all about guys being able to help each other. We're not therapists, but we're brothers for each other, and we can. And that helps. That's a lot of the time. And again, we're not, for those who have real severe things that need to be dealt with by the proper channels, go deal with those things, but when it comes to what the goal for this movement is, you do a lot of yoga, guess what? Chances are you're not going to have to go to the doctor for a lot of cardiovascular things or muscle things, or that being said, it's preventative. And that's what this movement is here, where guys can actually talk about this stuff, and it can prevent having to deal with worse things down the line. Jordie is a helper. Jordie, at the end of the day, you're still doing what you're doing. You're out there. If somebody wants to attach themselves to you or look at what you're doing or reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Jordie Taylor on Facebook, JordiTaylor on Facebook. That's where I'm mostly on stuff. Inner City Mystic is my Instagram, and the Best Pro Wrestler is my other Instagram. And like that's usually where I stay, is on those.
The Best Pro Wrestler? You're the best pro wrestler on Instagram?
I'm legitimately the best pro wrestler there is, so I have to label it on Instagram. But what I will say is, though, is what I feel like you're offering is love. Like it's love to everyone. Like, and there isn't a situation that enough love can't solve, right? Like love is the cure for everything, whether it's self-love, whether it's love from someone else trying to help you. Like it's literally all it is. Like men just need to embrace love and like embrace the love within themselves. And that's how you open your heart, right? Like that's all it is just offering the gift of love.
Man. I want to finish it right there. That I don't think that there's a better exclamation point to put on there. Jordie, I love you, brother, and I'm so grateful that you are vulnerable enough to talk about this stuff. Thank you for helping people. I'm so proud of. I hate to say this without sounding condescending. I'm so fucking proud of you, and it's amazing to watch where you've come from and where you're going. And I'm honored to be part of it, Jordie. Thank you very much for taking time to be on heCast today and talk about this stuff.
Thank you. And I love you too, brother. Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Oh, no problem. Okay. They finished that quickly. The time goes really, really quick. It's my favorite time of the week is when I get to do these things. I am very, very appreciative of all of the support that we have gotten so far with this He Changed It movement. You haven't seen anything yet. I promise you that. If you haven't downloaded the He Changed It app, what the heck are you waiting for? No matter your persuasion, whether you're an Android or an Apple person, search He Changed It in the App Store, download it for free, get the app, sign on in, and look at some of the resources we have. Once again, you ain't seen nothing yet. This has been another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.